My so, 26F, gets mad anytime I try to add my thoughts to the current conversation, but interrupts me with entirely different topics. Every time we are talking about something, if I try to add my thoughts to the conversation, she starts getting agitated or defensive because I'm interrupting her. The thing I don't get is that I'm adding one or two thoughts about the thing she is currently talking about, and then I stop talking to hand the reins of the conversation back to her. She interrupts me in the middle of talking about something, with some completely different topic. That's what bugs me the most. She gets defensive of me not listening to her, but to add my thoughts to the conversation I literally have to be listening to her. She can interrupt me with an entirely different topic. I feel like she's projecting because she knows she wouldn't be listening if she had something to say. I'm so frustrated right now. Too long didn't read. So thinks a conversation should be a monologue when she's talking, and a time for her to bring up a different topic when I am. Edit, I shouldn't have to say this, but I am not going to break up with my so. I'm looking for helpful advice to improve our relationship. I have a friend who had a horrible habit of talking over people and completely taking over any conversation. Obviously that shit is extremely unappealing, but somehow it seemed worse because otherwise she's a wonderful person. Anyway, I filmed her doing it. I did it a few times and got a random sampling of the behavior. It's not like I had a camera set up or anything. I did it with my phone and I wasn't very sneaky about it. Then I just sat down with her over coffee and put it out there. And I showed her what everybody was seeing, and she was appalled. After that, she made a concentrated effort to break that habit, and before too long, she did. Maybe try that with your so. She may have no idea how rude and shitty she's being, and maybe all she needs is to see it for herself. Can you give an example of one of these conversations? It might be good to talk to her about this, explain how it makes you feel, and give her some examples. Don't bring up that she does it to you, that is for a separate conversation. So this is how I made eggs this morning. I started it on 2 and 3 and used everything seasoning and sriracha. Sometimes I add this other stuff instead. This was my interruption from this morning. Edit, I just feel like it's connected though. I'm not sure she can put herself in my shoes enough to know that I'm saying something because I want to talk with her. I think he just thinks that when she does it she probably wouldn't be listening, so I must not be either. I was married for 6 years to someone who talked at me, not to me like your so does. By the end of it, I had become this entirely different, nearly silent person. Now, I am with someone who wants to hear about my days and the things that interest me and have amazing conversations about all kinds of things. Today I fucked up, and a whole part of myself that had been asleep has woken up. If she isn't able to acknowledge and actively work on being a better listener and conversationalist, I would seriously reconsider the relationship before you lose a part of yourself. Does she have ADHD? Obligatory, not an excuse for her behavior, however, it would explain some things. People aren't always on the lookout for it because it shows up in women pretty differently than men. The interrupting, frustration with being interrupted, and lack of emotional regulation would all make sense. I did all these things before I was diagnosed in my mid-20s and still struggle with them sometimes. I was about to chime in with the same thing. I kept getting accused of interrupting people and was finally diagnosed at age 32 with ADHD. It's not that I'm trying to interrupt or add my own anecdotes, it's that my brain wants to keep itself active in the conversation, and I do this by interjecting or saying something like, "Oh, that reminds me of when." If I just sit there quietly, I will be thinking of 20 other things and have nothing to add in response once you're finished, and probably have no idea what you said. It's not an excuse, but it's definitely a reason for a lot of couples' issues with communication. This is because she talks at you and not to you. There is no room for you in that perspective to add anything by the way she reacts to your input. You may need to start a conversation with her and in the beginning of it ask her to keep quiet until you're finished speaking your piece. Tell her how this makes you feel. How you feel that your input isn't valued and that her one-way conversations aren't fun nor conducive to an actual conversation. She's 26 not 6. She should be able to do this so that you can finally get a chance to express yourself yourself and possibly bring to attention something that she may not be aware of. If she cannot, I'd simply walk off and attempt again at a later time with the same introduction. If this still doesn't happen after a few attempts, I would reconsider having a relationship with someone who doesn't value your input. I hope this works out. Best of luck to you. My 27F BF 26M isn't a curious person and our conversations are boring. Is our relationship doomed? My 27F BF 26M is not a curious person and rarely asks me questions about myself or my thoughts on things. Feel we lack a connection. My boyfriend is very kind and gentle and sweet and loving and affectionate. Our sexual chemistry is great too and we argue really well, calmly resolve issues together. But I'm bored. We do not have very stimulating / deep convos. I am a very curious person by nature, and he is not. I ask him a lot of questions and he doesn't really ask me any besides the how was your day, how was work, how are you feeling, etc. I feel like he doesn't make an effort to know me. We've been together since March. It kind of hurts because it makes me feel like he doesn't care even though that's just his nature. He isn't a very curious person. He relies on me to volunteer info, but I am more of a listener and have trouble talking about myself, especially if there are no follow-up questions from him. I'll try to drop convo starters to help him get to know me, such as XYZ was a life-changing time for me, or you still haven't seen my artwork, gasp, it's sitting in my closet. He'll smile but won't follow up and ask me to show my art to him, or won't ask why that was a life-changing time. But he did get me a watercolor kit for Christmas. It's interesting because he pays attention to what I do and what I like. He just doesn't seem to want to know anything about it or go deeper. I write a lot for work and he isn't interested in what I'm writing about or read anything I write unless I ask him to or ask his opinion. When I bring something up he listens but doesn't really ask more questions. Meanwhile, when he's talking about his hobbies or activities I'll ask more cues because I genuinely want to know because I care. When he's reading a book I'll ask what it's about. When I'm reading a book he doesn't bother to ask what I'm reading. I talked with him about it, and asked him one day how he gets to know people. He said time and experiences. I started thinking maybe he doesn't find me interesting. But that isn't the case because I asked if he found me interesting or boring. He said of course he finds me interesting, otherwise he wouldn't be with me. I asked him if he could try and he's been making an effort to ask more questions / get to know me better, but they're very superficial because he seems to have to try really hard to think of things to ask. We enjoy doing things together like cooking, camping, hiking, watching shows, walking. We just don't talk much, even when we camp, having those long hours together. We love being in each other's presence, but I just feel alone sometimes and unfulfilled, because that's how I connect with people. Conversation. Has anyone been in this situation before? Is our relationship doomed? Too long didn't read. My BF is not curious and it makes me feel like we don't have a connection. We've been together 9 months. I had a girlfriend once who was a great person to go do things with. She was kind and generous and we had amazing physical chemistry. But she wasn't much of a thinker. I liked to talk about books, politics, life experiences, etc. And she had nothing to say because she just didn't really think much, so the relationship was doomed. We're now both with people who we are more suited to. Sounds like your situation might be like this. Same. My ex-boyfriend was a streamer, and unless it was gaming adjacent he literally had no thought. He didn't even know the name of the Prime Minister. We are English. That relationship got very tedious very fast. Now I'm with someone who I can talk to forever about everything and it's always amazing. This is my marriage, and it doesn't get better. At least it hasn't in this case, because he doesn't, and shouldn't really, see it as something that needs improvement. He's happy with himself, and I'm happy with myself. It's just not meshing. We're talking through things because it is a marriage after all, but I know that the rapid fire, time traveling, electric ping pong type of conversations I've had with friends and past lovers is not going to be found here. He ticked a ton of boxes for me early on, and we love and care for each other, but even before COVID I was climbing the walls with boredom and a need to be engaged / understood emotionally and intellectually. I'm 34 now, and I can tell you that there's probably a better way to spend your next 7 years that doesn't include trying to incite his interest in you. I wish I believed in myself enough at your age to think I could find it or that I even deserved it. Good luck either way, smile. Thanks for sharing this story. It's helpful on many different levels. I imagine for people reading this can really resonate with that last sentence there. Geez. It sounds like he knows the 3 basic questions you're supposed to ask your partner and doesn't care to go any further. He says he gets to know people through time and experiences, and I agree for surface friends and acquaintances that works, because you develop in jokes and stories and things eventually come out about people's lives. But when you're in a relationship, a lot of people want emotional intimacy and you can't build that his way. You have to signal interest about your partner. Sitting there while they tell you about their life and never asking questions is not enough. You have to decide what you want and need out of a relationship and look at his behavior right now. Not what you want him to be or how he can change. Right now, is he it? My 25M, GF24F, of 6 years continuously has public outbursts. I'm at a loss. We rarely argue, but when we do, she consistently makes a scene in public and it's driving me nuts. We've had the conversation dozens of times, because it has made friends uncomfortable, and she apologizes, but it just doesn't stop. Just today, we were bickering between each other, quietly, at an airport. I walked away, and she yelled at me loudly in front of 20 to 50 people. I don't know if this is something that other people deal with or what, but it's bonkers to me. My mom does this occasionally to me. Dad, is this something I should expect with any woman? I've only ever dated her. Too long, didn't read. Is it normal for your so to cause a scene every time you argue? Is this something I should expect with any woman? No, not at all. It's rare, and it's an immediate deal breaker the very first time. Making a scene in public is so fucking trashy. I bet she's also the princess type. Rolling eyes face. She's 24 and y'all have been together for 6 years. She ain't changing. This is very trashy. I don't even want to be acquainted with people who do this, much less in a relationship with them. She is childish and unable to control her behavior in a stressful situation. You have communicated to her that this makes you uncomfortable and have asked her to stop. She is either unwilling or unable. This is likely tied to her not taking your feelings in this matter seriously. You either need to accept this, work with her to change, or leave. You've already tried working with her. Doesn't sound like she's done anything to work on the problem. Woman here, I would be beyond humiliated. That shit stays behind closed doors. You've already expressed your feelings and she disregarded them. So I say dump her. No one who doesn't have the fucking emotional intelligence of a toddler makes scenes like that in public. Hey op, I bet there have been times where you felt that you were frustrated or unheard by your partner in a relationship, right? Did you make a public scene, or did you wait until you were somewhere appropriate for that conversation like a fucking adult, even if it meant turning to your partner and saying, "Can I speak to you outside now?" It's urgent if the situation was really untenable. Bet it is the second. I bet even if there have been times you truly lost it, we are talking about 1 or 2 exceptions to the rule, where you sent back and sincerely apologized to any friends you made uncomfortable and then didn't do it again. I'm just trying to think of every long-term couple I know. We all got together with our partners in our early 20s. We are now mid to late 30s, but most of us mentor younger folk who are in their early 20s. None of us has ever regularly caused scenes like that, although I think in that decade and a half, most of us have lost our rags like once. And if any of our apprentices behaved the way you describe your partner, they would be out on their ear, both socially and professionally. No one I know behaves like your GF. What's more, I bet your GF doesn't either. If she truly hits breaking point like this and can't help it, it will have shown up in her professional life. because who hasn't had to deal with the occasional shitty situation or jerkwad at work? Does she have a long string of disciplinaries and firings because of similar outbursts at work? No? Then she can help it. She is just choosing not to. She is choosing to take it out on you, because it gets her something that she wants. That is a massive, massive red flag. And you should take it as your cue to seriously reconsider whether you want to stay in this relationship.